it's afternoon, you've had your lunch, I don't know if you've had your cup of tea or not, so if there is any amount of snoozing that is happening, let me see if I can kind of shake you out of it, so I shall try. As the CLO people, they approached me to say, would you speak about learning, innovation and newer business models? I started thinking, because I work with financial services company, and somehow the minute we think of innovation, the first thing that strikes us and comes to our mind is to say, what is the product? What is it that we have innovated? What is that product that we've innovated? And I started thinking, and I said, okay, in financial services, I don't know how many of you are from financial services here. Are there any? Interesting, okay. It's an extremely regulated industry. Everything needs to go through the scrutiny of SEBI and RBI and everything before you can come out with any product. So there's very little chance for innovation. And whenever financial services has done some innovation on the product side, unfortunately it has backfired and we've had crisis after crisis. So it is becoming more and more regulated. However, having said that, there is a lot of innovation that is happening in terms of services that we provide, in terms of the solutions that we provide, in terms of looking at a problem, a financial problem, and providing a solution there, in terms of technology, in terms of innovation in operations. So there's a whole lot of innovation that has happened. So what I'm going to try and do over the next 15-20 minutes that I have with you is I'm going to run you through as to how learning, in my mind, as to how learning and innovation has tied up with two companies. I'm going to run you through two case studies which I had gone through when I had done my Harvard program of innovation many years ago in Boston, and they still remain with me somewhere in the back of my mind. So I'm going to run you through those two, and at the end of it, try and put across to say, in my mind, tie up with the culture that Prithvi spoke about, to say that if innovation has to sustain in an organization, what are those 4 or 5 things that are necessary for an organization to have to maintain the momentum of innovation? And that's how I will try and capture this. So if I just look at just the two definitions for learning and for innovation. So learning is acquisition of knowledge and skills through experience, practice or study. So it's just knowledge and skills that you acquire. And innovation is changing in something that is established by introducing new methods, ideas or products. So they tie in so beautifully together. You acknowledge the knowledge and skills, and after you've done that, you ensure that you're able to change the set pattern of way things are done, to innovate in it and bring in more enhanced quality in whatever that is done. So what I'm going to run you through is the first case study, which is around interestingly a function. We normally think of innovation, we think of production and products. So I was interacting with a very, very interesting professor. If you ever come and have any way of connecting with her, she's an amazing professor, Rosiana Di Maria. She is the New York University's Leadership Development Human Capital Management Program Chair. And she was telling as to how she had a coaching assignment. And the coaching assignment came to her from DirecTV to coach their CIO, their technology head. So she went and she did the typical things that any coach does. So she ran a full diagnostic, she did a 360 degree, she met with the peers, she met with the team leaders, she met with some of the customers, and at the end of it, she identified that wherever that their technology function was, because somewhere there was a serious fear of failure in the minds of people. So they just had this psychosis of to say you can't fail. And because they had that, they were just not able to innovate, they were just not able to deliver. So what she did is, she looked at and said, okay, what are the, so she figured out to say, she's very clear that it was purely around poor customer service. So the customer service that they were providing was really bad, and that was because of the failure that was there in their minds. So she tackled it at 3 ends first of all. She tried understand to say what was the business challenge there, what was the culture challenge there, and what was the learning challenge there. So the business challenge was that there was complete lack of credibility on the IT function. Nobody trusted them, nobody said they could deliver. The culture challenge was that the repercussions for failure was very high. So each time anybody had failed, there had been huge repercussions on that. And the learning challenge was that nobody wanted to accept that they had failed. There was just no acceptance of failure. So she did something very interesting. She devised a program which she called the F12 program. So the program was F12, which was focus on failures to deliver high performance solutions. So it was purely on failure. So she did this F12, which she called the 12-step recovery program. So how do you recover from failure? She put in these 12 statements that were there. You know, if I read those statements to you, we actually look at them and say, so what was the great thing about this? I mean, we all know this. They're so plain and simple. I'll just read out 3 or 4 to you. So the first one said, we admit that fear of failure drives blame and erodes performance. Second, we cannot succeed with this fear in our hearts. Third, we use failure as a tool to innovate and grow. And the last that she had was, we understand that failure is personally uncomfortable, but we fight through the pain to be transparent about our failures and our learnings. So like that, there were these 12 points that were there. She coached the function head to go across and spread this news to say accept and just be a F12 leader. So being a F12 leader meant you went across everywhere and you told everybody where have you failed. Your only job for the first 3 to 4 to 5 months was to just tell, openly share, pull out areas as to where you had failed. Then she did a 4-pronged approach to it. So 4 things that she did, which she implemented within that with the function head was, she created a social media platform at one end. We all know that people share a lot openly when it is anonymous and on social media than they would with their leadership team. So a lot of failures that they would have came out on social media. So she did that one piece that was there. The second that they created as a function was a gamification portal. So they created a game where it was around being the spy and an agent. So you were a spy agent, instead of that you were a failure agent. So all you did was you went around finding failures across that were there, and each time you found one, you got a badge, you got an honor, and at the end of it, whoever had collected or whoever was able to come out with maximum failures got the F12 Academy Award. So they ran the Academy Awards after a year, exactly like the Academy Awards are, to say where is it that had been failure. So picking up all that. The third thing that they did was that all this knowledge and all this information that was coming across from the game, from the portal, from the conversations that were happening, from the discussions that were happening, they did something called a sentiment analysis. So they looked at it to say what was working, what was not working. Whatever was not working was tweaked a little. So for example, when they ran the game, in that game they realized that there was lesser participation. So to enhance participation, they provided certain freebies to the people that would join. And instead of the game taking up, it actually dipped even further. So when it dipped further, they asked to say, why did this happen? So the people who'd been playing the game were very, very upset to say that, listen, we've been committed to this entire program and you get new people in there and you started giving things to them. Why would that be? We don't like that. So they changed it and they said, okay, every individual brings in a new member and gets something there. So they kept tweaking the program as they went along. So this is a sentiment analysis that happened. And then the last thing that they did was they created something which is called the video archive, which actually started getting called as the failure vault. So they would say, oh, have you put your failure in the vault? So they had this entire vault in which all the failures were there. And what they did, whenever they started a new project, while they did the project, they would go back into this vault. They would look at where is it that they had gone wrong. And wherever they had, they ensured that they did not repeat that in the new project that they were doing. So through this process of finding failure, creating an open and transparent organization, creating motivation and engagement, people started looking at that failure, finding innovative solutions to those problems that were the bugs that needed to be fixed, and in a straight 18-month period, they completely turned around the function. So I will just, and it was such a dramatic turnaround that if you go to Forbes, it was covered in Forbes as one of the best turnaround stories through a learning intervention. So finding innovative ways of doing things. So I'll give you just some metrics of performance that they delivered. So in 18 months, they had delivered 570 projects where there were no errors. They had put in a largest enterprise release of all time without any critical defects. Their engagement scores in the entire company, their leadership score had moved up by 9 points. Their empowerment score had moved up by 11 points. They had started a cell which started looking at new ideas. A team could be formed that would look at a new idea or a solution for their clients, which is their internal clients, and they were given 6 weeks to develop. So they started becoming more entrepreneurial in the way they did things. They became more risk takers. Earlier they would only depend on tried-tested vendors. Now they actually went out and looked at vendors that were through new VCs, new startups that were coming in, and reduced their cost of providing the services dramatically. So this is the whole turnaround that one learning intervention, which is just one coaching session with the head of a function, did to the entire function. So that's the first story that I want to, where there is a very direct linkage that I still remember when as I was talking to her, she was very passionate about it because it was one of her closest projects that she had worked on, and if she could explain it much better, I hope I've been able to just give you the tip of the iceberg in terms of how the connectedness is between learning and innovation. The second one that I will focus on is a very, very well-known company. I don't know if there's somebody here from, it's one of the most innovative companies apart from Apple. We keep hearing Apple all the time. Is GE. Anybody here from GE? Oh, sad. I thought there would be somebody and he could kind of help me, or she could help me with this. So this story is about product. And again, I will go back to what Prithvi had mentioned to say how a full cultural shift is brought about through learning and development. It's pure through learning and development to provide innovative products to a market and change the scene of the market. The whole business model changed. So I'll try and showcase that to you in the next 5 minutes. So we all know Jack Welch. Jack Welch is a very well-known name. He had now moved on and he had given the entire company to Jeff. Now Jeff Immelt came into GE at the time when everything had gone wrong. The IT bubble had happened, the WTC had happened, so the economy was going through stuff, and plus he had to live under the shadow of a name like Jack Welch, whatever he'd done and created. So as he looked at the company, he felt that Jack had been able to build the company on acquisitions and operational excellence. Those were the two key major driving force through which Jack built. But the economy had changed, the context had changed, and in this context, he felt that if he had to drive growth in GE, it had to be organic. It had to come within. It had to come from within the businesses. And he felt that if he had to build this organic growth, there were 3 pillars that were very, very important for his people to focus on. So the first one there was technology, that there had to be technology leadership in everything that they did. The second was commercial excellence. So no more operational, but commercial, which meant understanding the market, very strong marketing understanding and techniques, and actually charging for what the value is. So commercial excellence. And the third was global expansion. So what he did was, he actually put in frame a full set of competencies that needed to be developed. So he told his the education center, GE Education Center in Crotonal. So that's where he mentioned to say, find out and tell me which are the 4 competencies that are required, and build and develop my people in those. So the 4 competencies that they came up with was an external focus to think clearly, imagination and courage, inclusiveness and connection with people, and in-depth expertise. So So the center started looking at this entire thing. In 3 years flat, they had trained 7,000 executives across GE in these competencies. Feedback, development, building these into the operational framework of the company, in all their processes, in all their metrics, in their operating budgets, in their succession planning discussions, in their performance management discussions. Everywhere this was built in. So slowly the competence, the capability within people was developed. Once that had kind of taken shape, he then came up to say, okay, now we will focus on something called imagination breakthroughs. Very, very famous IBs, they were known as IBs, imagination breakthroughs, which meant every business had to come up with ideas that would help GE deliver $100 million in 2 to 3 years. That was the plain simple brief that was given to all businesses. The transportation business is where I will focus. So that business took this as well, and they looked at, through the competency they had built, they looked at this, okay, where was the market changing? So the market for railway locomotives was changing from the typical traditional towards low emission, environment friendly, that kind. So they came up with something which was called the evolution locomotive. It's called the Evo story. That's how the Evo came from evolution. So they were looking at the evolution locomotive, which was a hybrid. So it helped save fuel and also save labor. So that's what it did. And as they were going through this entire project and going through that production of it, there were serious challenges within the company to say this won't work. It is a huge investment and it won't go through. They went through their cycle, and I will share with you as to what was the performance from this first one. So by the time they launched in 2005, the entire 2005 production was sold out. Despite the fact that when this product had to be sold in the marketplace, the sales team was very certain that this will not go through. They had tested it through placing certain locomotives on lease, and even then the orders did not come. So despite that, Jeff came in and said, maybe it is because you're not pricing it right. He tripled the price. He said, charge the value for what this delivers, because it really helps with cost savings for the railways. So they had, by the time it launched in 2005, the entire 2005 production was sold out. They had orders for half of 2006. It helped GE transportation business capture 70% of the American locomotive market share. So that was the first thing that they did. They didn't stop there. They took the eco that they had into and developed an Evo baby. So now they said, okay, let's take it out to the international. So that's the second wave of innovation they did, to say we've captured America, let's capture international market. So they said to go to the international market because different countries have different kinds of railway systems in place. They are not identical. So how do we provide them with our locomotives? So they called it an eco baby, which meant that it would be like a Lego. So you would have these systems which you put in place depending upon what is required and service the countries. As they started, they realized halfway through production, they realized this is not going to work. It is an extremely expensive proposition. It will not help us make money. Halfway through, they changed it from a Lego base to a platform and called it Evo Family. So what they did now is they said, no more Lego. We have our engines. We have the Evo that we have our old traditional. Let's put them together in a basket, create a family, and then go and sell this into the marketplace. Through that, they captured 80 to 90% of the global market share for locomotives. Engine locomotives for the railways. They took it to that level. The next round of IB, the imagination breakthrough sessions that they ran, took the Evo family to services now. They said, now let's provide services around that. So the whole transfer of technology transfer, service contracts and everything came as the fourth round of innovation through the capability learning that was done at the beginning of the projects. So that's how they built the business. And just as some data point, GE in this period came out with $35 businesses, products all put together through their imagination breakthroughs, which contributed to $2 billion of revenue year on year. And it was purely because of the capability building which was done through their learning initiative. So these are the two stories, of companies that have actually built learning and development into innovation and newer business models that I wanted to share with you. And just last, before I hand over, before I do that is, I would like to share with you my own personal experience that I have had. Many times we send our people for offsites. We send our people for this innovative idea generation. In my mind, it cannot be done as a sideline activity. Innovation is something that needs to be built within the culture of the organization. It is a day-to-day practice that helps organizations just turn themselves around. And there is an approach which is by Patty Miller, and that's the one approach that I stand by, and we follow that in our company as well, which is a 5+1 as it is called. It's actually 6 B areas, but it's called the 5+1. And these are, the first is focus. And what we mean that is focus kind of beats freedom. So normally creativity just goes across everywhere. Focus ensures that people look for ideas that matter to the business. So that's the first one. The second is connect. We very strongly believe that insight doesn't come by sitting at your desks and your tables. Insight comes when you share, when you explore the external world. The newer worlds that you connect with teach you what are the needs, and that is through which you generate your ideas. So that's the second one, which is connect. The third is tweak, which is the first idea that ever comes generally is a bad idea. You really need to work on the idea, many iterative processes, before you can actually say that this is the idea that you can take away with. So tweak. Fourth is select, which is normally whenever we sit as in terms of our councils and how do you select the best idea? There are so many. They all sound good. Some, of course, you can't commercially take them on board. But through a basket of ideas, how do you select the right ideas and not the bad ideas? How do you help guide people to look for certain things in the ideas? So that's another one. The next that they refer to is stealth stone, which means how do you learn to navigate through the politics of internal resistance. In organization, there is a lot of internal resistance to sometimes to good ideas. So how do people that generate ideas are able to sell their ideas better, and how are people who are supposed to select these ideas are able to select them through the politics? How do they navigate that through better? And the last one is persistence. Creativity is not a one-time activity. It is a continuous, permanent activity. So how do you remain persistent? And the last piece that I would now like to revisit, which is a challenge. It's a serious challenge. It's a challenge with all of you. I think it's a challenge with us. How as learning professionals, we create engaging and blended learning programs which are captivating and they attract people. They actually are insightful. They attract people to come and join, and then they help them to find solutions for organizations. Not just an intellectual enhancement, but actual business connect that they